If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not new, welcome back. Today is the day that we finally take our project and we deploy it. Now, if you haven't seen the first episode, I highly suggest you take a look at that because that will walk you through how we set up this entire template, where we have an authentication system set up, we have Livewire installed, and just a lot of cool little things to it. Now, we also have the Git repo, where in this folder right here is the project itself and the portfolio template. It's just a template with some of the images that we used and just different things in there, so I would check that out. I've also added a link to the first episode, which is this right here, where you can go ahead, click that, and it will take you right to YouTube where you can see that video. I've also extracted that coder's portfolio into a separate repo. This way we are all working from the same place and we all have the exact same setup. I'm going to leave it private. There's no real need for it to be public. Everything is in the first repo that I showed you. I've also created a gist so that we can have a step-by-step guide. I borrowed this heavily from Coder's Tape, who, when I first deployed a Laravel project ever, I followed his guide and it was really, really good, but it is outdated now. I think it was using Ubuntu 16 maybe, and I want to use 2004 because it is the latest stable version of it. We are going to be following this step-by-step, and there will also be a link to this in the description. To set everything up properly, we are going to need a domain name. I'm going to be using Namecheap. This is the company that I use. I tend to use either this or GoDaddy, whichever has the cheapest rate. I only need it for the domain name, as everything else will be in DigitalOcean. But it does have some pretty good features in it. This, you don't need all of this. You don't need any of it. Like I said, we're going to be doing everything in DigitalOcean. The only thing we need from here is the domain name. So it's going to be really easy. You can do a search. I want to do, let's see, Coders Demos. And I've already actually picked one out, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the different rates that they have. Codersdemos.com, it'll be $8.98 a year. It also has a discount code, so if you use that, it'll be $5.98. Coders Demos codes, as you can see, it gives you a bunch of different options. I've already chosen codersdemos.xyz because it is one of the cheaper ones, and why not? And I do want to have it set up so that you guys can use it and just kind of click it just to see the speed of it and just really kind of test out what we can do with DigitalOcean. So I've already got mine checked. Go ahead to checkout. I don't have a referral code or an affiliate link for Namecheap. I do use it typically. Sometimes I do use GoDaddy. More often than not, I do use Namecheap. It has been pretty reliable for me, so I have no problems recommending it. One of the things that it does have is the ICANN fee, and this is 18 cents for the year. And I believe that ICANN is really just a registry for different domain names so that two people can't have the same domain name. It ensures that that is possible, as far as I'm aware. But I do suggest you research it and find out more about what it is. It is 18 cents a year. So the domain name was $10.98. We got it for $2, and it was an 82% off discount. So in total, it'll be $2.18. The other thing that it does have is domain privacy. What that means is that your personal information that you use to create the domain, it keeps that from being put into the Whois database. So your phone number, your email, your address, all that stuff will not be made public. It keeps you from getting spam. It keeps you from being stalked, all of those things that could be negative. It keeps you from being public on that database. So if we head down a little bit, you can also get a premium DNS. That's $4.88. I don't see why you would need that, but if you want to spend the $4.88, that's entirely up to you. It's not really my thing. It also gives you an SSL certificate. That is absolutely not necessary because we will be getting our SSL certificates free with DigitalOcean. You can also set up a VPN, WordPress. You can get an email. Now, I've used their email before. For me personally, it didn't really work out. It wasn't as robust as I wanted it to be. It was just very limited for how much it costs per year. So I no longer use my email from them anymore, but you can do the free trial and see how you like it, see how you feel about setting it up. They do have some forums where you can ask for help and try to get help, and they're usually pretty good about responding. You can also do web hosting, which we will not need, premium DNS, social media manager. All of these things you can look at on your own. We will not be needing it for this demo. Go ahead and confirm order. So here you can go ahead and log in or create an account. I already have an account, so I'm going to log in. But if you take a look at the create an account, these are the fields that you'll need to have. You can uncheck this for the newsletter, but if you really, really want it, then leave it checked. I'm sure you can change that later. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, and I'll meet you on the other side. Okay, so now you should have been brought to the review section, and because I already have an account with them, they just use my information to fill it in and handle that for me. So as you can see, the domain registration, this is the domain name, coders-demos.xyz. 1 year registration, $2, and then 18 cents for the ICANN fee. Free domain policy, free forever, yay. Subtotal is $2.18. And then you also have a payment method. They'll give you all of that information. And then for your renewal settings, I have it set to automatically renew all of my services. And then it will issue in a receipt for you with your address and your phone number, your email, all that contact information. Okay, so let's go ahead and pay now. Okay, so everything is all done. We have our confirmation number. It tells you when it was placed and all that good stuff. And then it just gives you the rest of the information that you had before. And on the right, you can also download your receipt, which I think is pretty cool. That's pretty much it for the domain name for right now. Now we are ready for DigitalOcean. And if you haven't already, I am giving you a $100 credit that lasts for 60 days to try out DigitalOcean, see if you like it, see if it's something that you would want to do. It is what I use for almost every single Laravel project that I have. I am leaving that link in the description for you. And if you decide to continue on after the 60 days, I will get a small kickback that will help me keep doing content like this. So the first thing that we want to do here is create a droplet. So what you want to do is you want to come up here where it says create, and then it'll give you options of different things that you can open up and create. But we just want to create a droplet. Now that that's done, we have different options for servers, and typically servers are run with Linux environments. I've seen questions asking, what about Windows environments? What about Mac environments? Those are all possible. However, Linux is much, much faster. It is much more lightweight. And you'll find that these days, many servers are run with Linux. I think the question kind of came around because people are kind of a little bit wary of Linux. There's nothing to be afraid of. We're going to take it step by step. We are going to be using Linux commands. And after this, you'll be a pro at setting up servers. As you can see here, we have Ubuntu and the default is set to 22.04. I don't want to use that because 20.04 is the most recent with long-term support. And so that's the one that I want to use. Go ahead and click that. And then if we scroll down, we can choose a plan. I just want to use a very basic server. Instead of the premium Intel or AMD ones, I want to use a regular SSD. And even if you go down to the left, you'll see that the cheapest package that they have is $4. And that gives you 512 megabytes, 10 gigs of SSD disk, and 500 gigs of transfer. Typically for Laravel Project, because there are many files that make it up, I tend to use the $6 one, which is the 1 gigabyte, 25 gigs. This way you give yourself a little bit of space in case you want to expand the project or do anything like that. You can always increase the space, but typically instead of doing that, I would just choose the $6 one. And if you wanted to expand, I would just use load balancers and create more droplets that are $6. That's what I would do. But for the demo, we're just going to be using the $6 one. As I said, it is 1 gig. And yes, I've been filming for a long time and realized that I did not have my pointer. So here it is. So the next thing that you want to choose is your data center. You can choose the one that's closest to you. I'm going to be choosing one of the New York ones because that's closest to me. The next thing we need to do is set up some authentication. I do have some SSH keys here, but I am going to set up a new one to show you how they are done. Authentication comes in 2 forms. You can either use SSH keys, you can use a password. It is highly suggested that you use SSH keys and not a password. I'm going to go ahead and create a new SSH key. And if you look here, they do give you some instructions on how to set it up. You can use SSH-keygen and go ahead and create it. And then once you do, then you take the public one, and that's the one that you want to use for in here. However, I set up my SSH keys a little bit differently, and I'll show you how to do that. So let's open up a terminal. For me, I am a Windows user. I am using Windows Terminal, but I am using Git Bash in the Windows Terminal. That's just because for me, it seems to run much faster than anything else. The command that I use to create my SSH keys is this. And what it is not just a regular RSA key. It is ED25519. They have several different versions of these that you can use. This is the one that I tend to use. What I'm going to do is in here, I am going to add the email, but I'm going to use the fake email that we used for the project. The name of the key, I typically like to name it something along the lines of what it's from and what it's for. This way, it's easier for me to pinpoint them. I tend to have a lot of SSH keys. So for DigitalOcean, I'm going to do D04 ED25519. For me, that's pretty basic, but I know exactly which one it is. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. You can also enter a passphrase for this. I'm not going to do it. It's just a demo, but you should. And you would enter it again. Quick note, when you're entering something sensitive as a password or something like that, in these commands, you won't see anything show up, and that's just a security feature. Just press enter. If you've typed everything in, you know that you did. You just kind of have to make sure that you did. That's just why you're not seeing it. So I'm going to press enter again. And as you can see, the key has been created. To access the public key, we are going to do cat SSH and then the name of the key, which was D04 underscore ED25519, and make sure you put .pub, and this will give you your public key. Never ever give your other key. That is your private personal key. Never ever give that out. The public key is fine. We'll go ahead, copy that. And now here we can go ahead and paste that in, and we should be good to go. So let's go ahead and name this. I'm going to call this, let's say, YouTube Demos. Add the SSH key. Fantastic. It's already been selected, but that's the one that we're going to be using for this project. You can also enable backups. It's $1.20 a month, and they retain it for 4 weeks. You can use this. I'm not going to. I typically back up my stuff in other ways, but you can do it if you want to. You can also set up monitoring, which is free. You can set up a new network, and that's free. And you can also add user data. We're not doing any of these. They are not necessary for this demo. So now we have to finalize and create the droplet. If you were setting up a load balancer for this, you could add different versions of the same project like this, and you can create as many as you want. And as you can see, they're the same project name. They just have different endings for their numbers, but we're not going to need all that. We're just going to use the one. And typically, I also like to rename these. So I'm going to call this Coders Portfolio. This section right here is add tags. If you have spaces set up, or if you have a database set up, or something that you want to attach that you have in your account and you want to use it for this project as well, you would set up tags for them. And that's something that you can enter here. We're not going to do that. We don't have any for this project, but that is something that you can do as well. Then here you can also select the project, and you can add the droplet to whatever project it is. So for us, our project is going to be Coders Portfolio, and we're going to leave it at that. But if you wanted to add the droplet to any one of your other projects, you can just click the drop down and it will do that for you. Let's go ahead and create the droplet. We have our server set up. As you can see here, we have our ISP. So if we copy that and we go to the browser and put that in, we're not going to get anything yet because there is actually nothing in this server just yet. It's not working. I just want it here to prep us for the next part. So now we can go ahead and use our handy dandy step-by-step guide for deployment. We've already done the first part, which is to create the droplet. And then we want to make sure our key is authenticated on the system first. That key that we made for DigitalOcean, the SSH key, we want to make sure that we can get that in. First, we're going to test it out by SSHing into the server. Again, we're going to be using our terminal. Let me clear this out. What we want to do is SSH root at, and then go ahead, paste in that ISP and enter. The authenticity of the host, it just is basically saying, hey, this is a new key. Do you want to continue connecting to the key? We haven't seen it before. So we're going to do yes. And then it permanently added it. However, you see the permission is denied. In this guide, I have set it up so that you could connect to the SSH agent and then have it authenticate your key on your system. This is the first command that we want to use. We'll go ahead and paste that in. And then the next command is to add the SSH key. And then here we're going to paste that, and then we're going to add the SSH key. It is D04 underscore ED25519. And again, I've had to do this several times on the system. So sometimes if you're logged out and it's saying that, then these are the two commands that you can run to get it up and running again. So the identity is added and we're good to go. So let's try to SSH into that again. Congratulations, we have logged in as the root user. Fantastic. At this point, now that we're logged in, we want to create a new user. And the reason for that is we don't want to give full access to our root user. We just don't want to have that exposed. So what you do is you create a new user. We're going to say add user, and I'm going to call it Nico because that's me. We're essentially going to be giving them sudo privileges. Sudo is super user do, and so it just gives you almost the same privileges as the root without giving all of the access to the server. We're going to do add user Nico. We're going to give it a password. You can enter these fields if you want. I don't want to. I'm just going to press enter to get out of this. And then is the information correct? Yes, enter. To now give this new user privileges, we need to do user mod -a capital G sudo. And then we want to give the name of our new user. So now they have sudo privileges. What we also want to do is we want to make sure that any authentication that the root user has, we also want to make sure that it is mimicked with the new user that we created. And I can never remember this off of the top of my head, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this, which is this info right here, and then we'll go ahead and add that. We need to add the new username here. This is the new user's home folder. And then here is where we're giving them the permissions. Add your name there. Then go ahead, press enter. We have synced the key privileges that we've given to the root. We also now have for the new user. Now we should be able to log in as a new user. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a new terminal. And then I want to do SSH Nico and then add our ISP. Permission has been denied. What I said before about authenticating with the SSH agent, we're going to have to do that again. Here, we're going to copy this, paste that in, and then SSH add, we need to add the SSH DO and this is our DigitalOcean key again. Enter. The identity has been added. Let's go ahead and try to SSH again. We have logged in with our new user. That means that now we can close this. I'm not going to close it yet, but we can. And we need to start locking down the passwords and everything to the server. So now with the new user, we need to create an SSH key for the GitHub. This is going to be so that this user can push and pull and make changes and do whatever they want to do with the Git repo. So I'm going to go ahead, paste that here. And we're going to add that new email. And then the name of the key, I am going to call it GitHub _ed25519. And that should be good. Press enter. Enter the passphrase. We have no passphrase. Now it's created both keys for that GitHub. So what I want to do is I want to grab the public key and I want to add it to GitHub now before I forget. The term cat is just basically an echo statement, and then .ssh GitHub _ed25519, and then we want the pub. So that's the key. We're going to go ahead and add this to our GitHub. So what you want to do is you want to come over to your icon here and you want to go to settings, and then you want to go over to SSH and GPG keys. Here is where you're going to add your key. I'm going to name it, let's see, Coders Portfolio. Then I'm going to go ahead and paste this in, and then we'll add the SSH key. If you head all the way down, your new SSH key should be at the bottom of your SSH keys. You may not have as many as I do, and it might be the only one, but if you do, then it would be the most recent one at the bottom. Let's go to the next step. So now we need to disable the password from the server. Typically, I use Vim, but for some reason, I am having a hard time getting Vim working on this computer. I'm going to be using Nano, and I will go ahead and change these instructions before I post the video and give you guys access to this. I'll change this to Nano just so that you have everything exactly as I'm doing it. So let's go ahead and disable the password for the user. I'm going to go ahead and enter this, but this is now going to be Nano. And then enter. Now we've opened up the Nano editor. So what I want to do is I want to look for permit root login. To do that in Nano, you would do Control W and then permit enter, and there it is. So now to edit it, we can just use our arrow keys, and we want to make sure that we turn this to no. And we also want to make sure there's a password authentication. These new setups with DigitalOcean, they have already set this to no. I've added this in the instructions. You just want to make sure that this password authentication right here is set to no. So now we can do Control Exit, save modified buffer, yes, and then enter. Now it's been edited. To do that in Vim, the search would be a \PER, and then you would look for it. And then to save it, you want to escape and then colon, and that's pretty much it. Let's head back to our instructions. We've already done that. We only need to reload the SSHD. Now we can go ahead and add that. And now we've reloaded SSHD. We can start setting up our firewalls. To see the available firewalls, you would use this command right here and it'll list everything out. The only one that we have so far is OpenSSH, and that's one that we need to add. So we can do sudo ufw allow, and then we need to enable it. It may disrupt existing connections. That's fine. We're not running anything else on here. And now it's active and enabled. To verify that, we can just check the status. Good to go. So it's been allowed and it's from anywhere. And so now you see the status is active. The next step, we are going to start installing Linux, Nginx, MySql, PHP. And I know I didn't say it before, but we are using the LEMP stack. So Linux, Nginx, MySql, and PHP. Let's go ahead and make sure that now everything in our server that we have so far is updated and upgraded. Go ahead and paste that in. Enter. Now it's telling us that it'll take up an additional 180 megabytes of disk space. Do you want to continue? Yes. That is all done. Let's go and take care of the next step. We can go ahead and install Nginx. In order for us to skip the step where it asks us if we want to continue, we can do a -y, and that will just automatically let it run. Okay, great. The next step is to now check out our app list. So as you can see, we have more. We have Nginx full, HTTP, and HTTPS OpenSSH. So now we can go ahead and allow the HTTP. It has been added. Now we can check the status and make sure that everything is running. So everything has been allowed, the OpenSSH as well as the Nginx. What we can do now is we have our Nginx installed. We can now see that in the browser. If we go back to where we put the ISP, we can go ahead and refresh it. And there you go. Welcome to Nginx. And if you've made it this far, then very good. You have installed Nginx into your system. This command right here will list the users with the groups. And this is what's available for Nginx. As you can see, we have root, www-data, and Nico. They all have some kind of permissions. What we want to do is we want to give our user the www-data permissions. Go ahead and paste that in. Something to understand as well is when we are using these commands, whenever it says $user, that means that it understands that the user that we are logged into is the user that it will insert. So you don't have to add the username here. So go ahead, press enter and give them permission. And let me clear this out so we can see it up top. So now we can install MySql. If you've used Ubuntu, I believe it was 1804 and earlier, the process for doing it is slightly different. They have changed some things. So I've added the updated information here. If you want to read more about that, then you can go ahead and look at the DigitalOcean forums where they have this stuff listed. So we're going to do sudo apt install MySql server. I forgot to add the Y, but there it is. So now that that's done, we can go ahead and start the MySQL service. And that's all that was. Clear, so we can see this. Now we can sudo into the MySQL and start working in there. Congratulations, you have finally added MySQL and now you are logged into your MySQL server. We want to check what the user's authentication method is. And let me make this smaller. So as you see here, we have different users. We are root user. All of the other users have an authentication string, and that's what we want. The root user that we have is using the authsocket plugin. That's not what we want. The host is also localhost. So let's go and change this. To change the user's authentication method, we're going to use this command right here. To be clear, we are using the root user for MySQL and not the root user for the server. So what this is saying is we want to alter the user root at localhost, and it's going to be identified with the MySQL native password by password. That's the password that we are going to give this user. We will change it later, but this is what we're using for right now. So we'll go ahead and enter. That's all that is. So now the user can log in with that. Then we're going to exit, and then we're going to use this command. All this command is saying is that for MySQL, we want to log in with the root user and we want to use their password. Our password is password. If you've typed it correctly, then you should be logged into your MySQL now. After that, we're going to exit and then we are going to install the secure installation. Exit, clear, and then we'll go ahead and install that. Press enter. What the secure installation is going to do is it's going to create a better authentication system for us. So let's go ahead and log in and take a look at it. We are going to be using the validate password component. And what this will do is it will test the passwords that you create and make sure that they are secure based on pre-configured conditions that it has to meet. Would you like to set it up? We're going to say yes. There are 3 levels of password validation policy. You have low, medium, and strong. And then the low starts with it just needs to be at least 8 characters. And then it increasingly goes up with the degree of strength. For us, I'm just going to be using 0. You can use whatever you want. Enter. It's using the existing password for root. The estimated strength of the password is 50. If we did it for the strong one, it would be 100. And it would ask us, do you want to change it? And then it would check it again. Change the password for root. We're going to say no. So by default, MySQL installation has an anonymous user. Do you want to remove the anonymous user? And yes, because we have no idea who they are anonymous. It's also asking if you want to disallow root login remotely. Yes. There's also a test database. Do you want to remove that? We're going to say yes, we do not need it. Then it's asking to just reload the privilege tables now. Yes. Fantastic, we are all done. So that was all of that. I want to log in again, and then I want to run this command so we can see what the auth methods are now. We will log in with that password, and then we'll go ahead and check to see what that authentication method is. As you can see, root now has the authentication string, and the plugin, we're using the MySQL native password, and the host is still localhost. We are all done with MySQL. When we get ready to install the project, then we will go back to PHP and basic Nginx setup. We need to install the package managers for PHP. And then I'm also going to add that Y flag. In the event that you do not have it installed, that would be the command that you run for it. We already have it in here. So now we can use the repository from Andre J, and we'll copy that. And we'll add that. Do you want to continue? You have to press enter to continue. Okay, great. Now that that's done, we will sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. Just to make sure that everything is up to date, I'm going to add the Y for that, and I'm going to add the Y for that as well. Everything has been updated and upgraded. So now we can install PHP, and we're going to install version 8.0. FPM is the installer for Nginx. And I believe if you were using Apache, then you wouldn't have to use the FPM. Paste that. Now that we've installed that, we can check to see if it's been installed. Great, so we have PHP 8.0.21. We need to install the extensions that are needed for Laravel. Go ahead, paste that in, and let it run. Okay, great, let's move on. We need to sudo into the php.ini file. And so I'm going to copy this. And again, I'm using nano instead of vim. So now we can look for CGI fix. It is right here. This is why I don't like using nano, because it's hard for me to see when everything is the same color. We need to change this to 0. Control X for exiting, save it, yes, and enter. Then we need to restart PHP. After that, we need to check and make sure that the Nginx is working. So we'll copy this, and let me clear this and make it a little bit bigger. Go ahead, paste that in. And first, I want to change this to nano before I forget. And then we want to add our new domain, which is, for me, codersdemos.xyz. Enter. Now we need to edit this. We are going to use this to just kind of test it out. This is a very basic server setup for Nginx for PHP, and not necessarily Laravel specific, but definitely for PHP. So I'm going to copy this. Then I'm going to go ahead, paste that in. And then I'm going to go up to where it says server name, and I'm going to add the domain here. So now we can Control X to exit, save, and done. What we need to do is create a symbolic link. So right now, our symbolic link is set to the default. Before we do this, I'm going to copy this, and then I'll show you where it is. So we'll cd etc nginx. We'll go there first. We'll list out everything in here. We have sites enabled and cd sites enabled. Let's see what's in there. This is our default. If we do nano default, it'll open up this test server information, and that's exactly what we saw already. It's pretty much what we set up. You can use this as well. I don't like to touch this one. I leave it as it is for reference. So if I ever lose any information, at least I have this here. Exit out of that. We'll go back to the beginning. We'll go ahead and paste this in. And now we want to change the sites available. We want to make a symbolic link from our new site to the sites enabled. Coders demos.xyz. Enter. So now we've created a symbolic link. Now to remove the default link, this is not removing it from the system, it is just unlinking it. Fantastic. So now we want to test the server and make sure that the configuration files are good to go. We've gotten the green light, the syntax is okay, and the test was successful. Then we want to reload Nginx. To test this out, we are going to create a new file, and we're going to see if we can see it in the browser. If we can see it in the browser, that means that the sites enabled are now linked to where our website is supposed to go. We're going to grab this, paste it in. I'm going to change this to nano. So now we are going to add this command to it. Make sure there are no spaces or anything like that in between. We're going to go ahead and paste it up here. And all this is going to do is just print out PHP information. So if we can see this, we're good to go. Let's go ahead and exit out of this. And now if we go to the browser where we have our ISP, we're going to do /info.php. Now our site has been linked and we can see what we're supposed to be seeing. So this is coming from us and not from the default any longer. We can go ahead and get rid of that PHP file because we don't need it. That was just a test. And that's pretty much it. Now, if you decide that you don't want to do it the way we did it and you want to relink your default, here is the line that will relink the default to the sites enabled. That's pretty much done. Now we can go ahead and install Node.js. And we are installing Node.js globally, so just like if you install Node.js on your system so that you have it available to all of your projects, it's pretty much the same thing that we're doing on our server. We're just installing it globally within our server. Now we can install the Node.js packages. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and do sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade, just to make sure that everything is up to date. Let me add my Y. Okay, so everything's up to date. We're good to go. So now we want to create a location for these Laravel files. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. We've CD'd into it. If you take a look here, we only have HTML in here, so we are going to add that Laravel file. I misspoke, it is not a file, it is a directory or also a folder. And now we want to give ownership to everything in that Laravel folder. www-data, and then we're going to add our user's name here. Good. Let's go ahead and fix that sites available so that we can add the actual server information that we're going to be needing for Laravel. Now, I got this from Laravel's website in their deployment guide. That's where all of this is coming from. So I'm just going to copy this and we'll open it up. Before we do that, I want to CD out of here and then I'll paste that in. I will also change this to nano. I am not entirely sure how to empty out the whole page, so I'm just going to use the delete key to get rid of what's in there now. Then I'm going to go ahead and copy all of this and paste it in. Okay, so a couple of things that we do need to change up here. The first thing that we need is the domain name. I like to do both the domain name and the www.domain name. And as you can see here, the root is to var www Laravel. This is the folder that we just created, and we're going to use the public folder from there. That's where everything is going to be pointing to. This is just basically saying that we want to accept index or index.php. We have a location for the favicon, the robots text. There's an error page. If someone tries to reach it, we do have some sort of 404 page for it. We also are using fast CGI pass and params. And the location, well known, deny all. Control X, we're going to save and let that be. Now we can go ahead and test that and make sure that our Nginx server doesn't have any errors. So the syntax is okay and the test was successful. Let's go ahead and reload. Good to go. Now we can go ahead and install Composer. I'm going to grab this command right here, paste that in. Composer has been installed, but we do need to move the file because if not, we'd have to use composer.var instead of just Composer. So we'll go ahead and move that file. So now we can just do Composer, and if everything went well, then we should be able to see Composer now. Fantastic, there we go. We can go ahead and install Git and get our bare repo set up. So we're going to cd into the var. We are going to make the directory, and then we're going to cd into that repo directory. And now we need to make a new directory called site.git, and then we need to cd into that. So from here, we're going to initialize our repository. Go ahead and grab that from here. Now, again, it's an empty repository. It's going to create a staging environment for us so we can check everything out. And then before we push it to the main production server, then we can just kind of test everything out before then. So now we want to cd into the hooks folder. And now we want to sudo into this post receive. And again, I'm going to be using nano. Now we need to add this into that. For here, you want to make sure that everything is pulled all the way over to the left. So what this is saying is that we're basically going to have a mirror from our Laravel folder to our repo, which is in the site.git. Everything will be mirrored to there. That's pretty much all that's saying. So then we want to control X, save, exit. So now we need to give permission to those processes. We're going to copy this. And then we want to give ownership to that repo folder. Okay, so let's make sure to add our user. Now that that's done, we can create a swap file. And what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that our project isn't going to be putting too much pressure on the server. So we're going to cd into this folder right here, which is the Laravel folder that we created. And then we're going to run the sudo command to create the swap file. We're going to have 1024 records in and 1024 records out. So this will help us out a lot. We'll go ahead and make the swap. And then we will go ahead and swap on. So let's go ahead and clear that out now that our swap files are done. Here we need to go into the text editor or local machine and cd into the project. And then we want to add our credentials, and then we want to create the production remote, and then we're going to push to it. Let's see if we can do this first before we give our credentials. And the credentials that we'll be needing for this in particular will be the DigitalOcean credentials. Let me go ahead and open this up. I need to stop these servers from running. And I'm going to open up a new one. And then I'm going to paste that in. And then we're going to need our name at our address. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. And then I'm going to paste in our ISP, and hopefully this should work. So we've added the production. If we do git remote, you'll see it here. So let's try to push it. Before we do this, you need to make sure that you don't have any stage changes here. You want to make sure everything has been pushed up to the origin before we do this. I've already done it, so that's why you don't see any green here. But before you do this, you want to make sure it's pushed to the origin before production. And that's what you always want to do. Every time you push to production, it is actually pushing to our website. Make sure that the origin is done first. Let's try to git push production. Okay, so permission was denied. Let's go ahead and see if we can add our credentials. So we're going to need to start the SSH agent. Okay, that's started. So now we're going to do SSH add, and then here we need to do the curly bracket SSH and then DO ED 25519, I believe so. So we've added that. Let's try to push again. Hey, success, success, success. It has gone through. Let's check our server now and see what we have. We'll go ls, and there is our Laravel project. You can see we have app, bootstrap, the composer, everything that we need. Fantastic. So we've done that. We've done that. Now we need to set some permissions. So we're going to sudo apt install ACL. And this will allow us to set permissions for Laravel. Now we need to sudo set, and then we need to add permissions to our storage folder. Okay, so make sure you put your username here. And if you didn't notice, we are back in the server. Press enter, and that should be good. And now here are another set of permissions that we need to add. And again, put your username. And to find out what all of these permissions are, you can look them up online. They all mean something different. it is definitely worth taking a look at to see what kind of permissions that you're giving. So now we need to do this permission. I'm sorry, this one is just to take a look at what permissions we have. So for the storage file, I am the owner and I am the group. Here are the permissions that I have, and these are the permissions that are set for that storage folder. We can install the vendor files, make sure to run optimize commands. That's what this O flag is for. Let's try this one. Instead of doing that, we need to do composer update. I'm going to close this because we do not need that anymore. We've installed our vendor files. And that's done. And so now we want a composer dump autoload optimized. These are typically commands you don't want to run on your server. I'll show you that afterwards, what I typically do. So now we can install npm. All of our node modules have been installed. I want to set up the database for this project. But before we do that, we are going to create a user for the database, and we are going to give them all permissions for that database. So let's go ahead and log in. Go ahead, paste that. And then we are going to create the database. So I'm going to call this one Coders Portfolio. Enter. Oh, okay. Try that again. And I don't think I need these. So we've created the database, and I think we can do show databases semicolon. Ah, I've misspelled the portfolio. That's fine. It's only for a demo, not a big deal. Now we can go ahead and create the user. And this one, I'm just temporarily going to give it, we'll say password. And then the new DB user. For a name, we can go ahead and just use Laravel. That's completely and totally fine. So now we need to grant all permissions to this new user. So we'll copy this, grant all privileges on. We'll add the Coders Portfolio, and then the user is Laravel. So we're going to give all permissions to that Laravel user now. And then we can flush any of the remaining privileges. We can exit. Our database has been set up for the project. You want to make sure that you've done all of this in the Laravel folder as well. I don't know if I said that before, but it's just like if it was on your system. Let's go ahead and set up the .env file. We're already in that folder, but we're going to copy the example file. And the reason we're doing that, if we do LL, we'll be able to see a full list of everything available. We do not have the .env file because, that's in the git ignore, so it won't be here. Just like as if you were pushing any code to GitHub, you wouldn't have the .env file. You would need to do this. So we'll go ahead and paste that, and we'll create it. Now we want to sudo into that file and make some changes. In here, I'm going to change the app name to Coders Portfolio. The app environment, we are now in production. We will deal with the app key in a bit. App debug, make sure that's false. For the app URL, for now, before we set up the domain name, we're going to change this. We are going to go ahead and paste in our ISP. Coders Portfolio. Now we need to change the username here to Laravel and the password to password. Let's go down. For the mailer, we'll just add the mail trap. Go ahead, paste that in, and those are my credentials. Again, these are not going to work for you. These are mine. If we go down, I think that's pretty much it. Control X. Yes. Oh, I broke it. All right, let me try this again.
A few moments later.
Okay, I am back. I am really unfamiliar with Nano. I haven't used it in a really, really long time. But whenever that happens, just X out of it, go back into the server. You didn't save anything, so I just had to refill everything out. But the one thing that I did want to show you is because I misspelled the name in the MySql that we just set up, we need to go ahead and make sure we change that. And so now the username is again Laravel, password, password. Everything else is pretty much the same. I haven't changed anything else. And as I said, we'll be dealing with the app key in a bit. Control X this time, save it, good to go. I've included the time zone. You can do that as well. I sometimes like to put it, so I just added it to this. But if you don't want to use it, you don't have to. The other thing we need to do is now regenerate the key. And then we need to cache the config. This just helps it run faster. Let's try to migrate this. Application in production, do you really wish? Yes, I do. Our migration has been run successfully. We need to give permissions to both the Laravel storage, more permissions, as well as the permissions to the Laravel folder altogether. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to go ahead and cd out of this, and I'm going to paste that in. And then I'm going to paste in the other one for storage as well. Because we are using Vite for this project, npm run build, we need to run that. I need to go back to that folder. cd. Now we can run that. So now it is running on the back end. Let's head over to the browser and see what we have. We can get rid of this. Hey, look, here is our website and here is our domain. Well, not our domain, but here is our server. And it looks like everything is here. Let's try to register. I agree. Register. Look at that. It's lightning fast. It's crazy. Now, we also don't have these images here. What you can do is PHP artisan storage link. Let's try it now. Oh, because we don't actually have those images in there. Let's look. ls cd storage, ls cd app, ls cd public, ls. Yeah, we don't actually have the files in there, but that is not a problem. We can actually do this from VS Code. From here, we can do scp storage app public. Our folders are, where are they? App public assets image. And the first one is going to be the register underscore bg. What does that say? bg2.png. And then we're going to use the username, so Nico at, and then we're going to paste in our ISP, :/var/www/laravel/storage/apps public assets/image. So we're basically just repeating the same thing. So we'll go ahead, press enter. Oh, it's assets. And it is not apps, it is app. So let's see, assets, app. Okay, so let's change this. We need to create these folders. So we're going to create a directory. We're going to call it assets. And we're going to cd into that assets. And then we're going to make directory image. And then we're going to cd into that image folder. Now that we have it, let's try it again. There we go. We've got the first one. Let's go ahead and do the second one. it's team-1- I should have renamed these 800x800.jpg. Let's give that a go. If we do ls, now we have our files. That should work. Go ahead, refresh. Ah, there he is. And then let's go ahead and log out. We'll go to this register page, and now we have the background in the back as well. So that worked perfectly. Typically, if you only have a couple of images like that, that's usually okay. But if you have a lot more, then you probably do want to get a space and set that up to work with this. But for now, we are good to go. FYI, that was the end of what I have here, but everything else that we add, I'm going to add this to it later. This way you'll have it by the time the video is released, so I haven't actually done that part yet. What I want to do is connect our domain name to our server. So to do this, you want to go to your domain. What we want to do is we want to go to the domain list, make sure you're logged in. This should work pretty much with whatever domain place that you've gotten this from. So even if you got it from GoDaddy, it's pretty much the same setup anyway. So here's our project right here. We have everything looking good. We don't expire until 2023. We want to click manage. Now you can see everything set up. So what we want to do is we want to add the name servers. We don't want to use this one. We want to create custom ones. And this will be the same for all of them. So it's ns1.digitalocean.com. We want to do ns1, ns2, and then we need a third one for ns3. That should be good. We don't have anything else set up for it. But now we can go ahead and click this check mark right here, and that will save. Now, sometimes it takes a while for these to propagate in the system, which means that by the time I'm finished recording, then I will come back and record it. I'll let you know how long it took. We are going to continue on, and hopefully it is active by the time we get to it. Sometimes it could take 15 minutes, sometimes it could take 48 hours. We'll just be patient. Head over to our DigitalOcean now, and we can go to these three buttons over here. Well, actually, let's take a look. We haven't looked in here yet. In here, you can see that we have the 2004 Ubuntu setup. This is what we're paying for. These are the regions we're in. This is our ISP. That's our private ISP. And this is the area that we're in. And that's pretty much it. So now we can click this, add domain. Here we can go ahead and do codersdemos.xyz. And then we already have it set here, so we can just press add domain. Okay, so it was added. We need to add some things. It must have propagated already because it's already in here. We have the codersdemos.xyz, and that's the ISP that it should be directed to. I also like to add another one, and we'll call it www. And so as you type it, you'll see what we're pointing it to. So whether someone types in Coders Demos or they type in www, then it will lead you to that same page. Select the resource. Here is our droplet right here. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and then we're going to create the record. Fantastic. We should be good. Let's see if we can go to that. I'm going to copy this. We're going to paste it in here. See what happens. It hasn't been propagated yet, which is absolutely fine, but we can continue on. I want to just cd out of this. I want to go and edit that .env file. var www.laravel cdvar. If you have a long stretch of text, we only have a little bit here, but if you had much longer, which does typically happen, if you click Control A, that will take you back to the beginning of the line. That's how I was able to add the CD. So that's a neat little trick for you. We're going to do sudo nano.env. Now we can go ahead and add that to our app URL. Exit out of that. Save it, enter. Let's see if that's helped. It has not. Now we can go ahead and install LetsEncrypt. So I'm going to cd out of this, and then we're going to do sudo apt install certbot python 3 certbot.nginx. I spelled certbot wrong. This should not be a dot. This should be a... And now let's try it. The following additional packages will be installed. Great. And then we'll do sudo nginx t to make sure that we are running everything okay. And then we'll do sudo system ctl reload nginx. Clear. Now we can check the status of our firewalls. Let's say app list. Now we want to install the nginx full. Sudo ufw allow nginx full. We've added it. Let's check and see what we have. Status. Now we have all of them installed, and we can actually get rid of the HTTP now. We'll do sudo ufw delete allow nginx HTTP. The rule was deleted, and we can check them again. We have just the full, and then we have our OpenSSH. We can do sudo certbot --nginx -d, and then we'll put our coders demos.xyz. And then we also can put our www.codersdemos.xyz. Enter urgent renewal, email address, enter C to cancel or give them an email. So I'm going to give them my email. This is my proper email, and I'm doing this because this is something that you would do anyway. I'm just going to put my real email. Press enter. Please read the terms of service. That's where the documents are located. And then if you agree, capital A, would you be willing to share your email? No. And now it's performing all the checks. So basically what it's just doing now is just verifying that those are proper domains and that you have the rights to those domains. It has deployed the certificates to virtual host for both of our sites. Please choose whether or not to redirect HTTP traffic to HTTPS, removing HTTP access. If you want to just leave it the way it is, it would change this to a green lock showing that the user has a secure connection to our website. It's basically just asking if you want to do that or not. I am going to use 2 so that it can redirect to that secure address. Congratulations, your certificate and chain have been saved, and it has been saved in your server in the etc folder LetsEncrypt. You should make a secure backup. You can do that if you want. I am not going to. If you like certbot, then you can continue supporting. And now we have free LetsEncrypt. Now the thing about this free LetsEncrypt is it automatically renews every, I think it's 3 months. You'll get an email about it letting you know that it's renewing, but it does it automatically. You don't have to do anything else. You are done. You have free LetsEncrypt. To make sure that we get that, what we need to do is run sudo certbot renew. And we're just going to do a dry run just to test it out. It lets you know it's not due for renewal, but simulating renewal for dry run. Plugin selected, authenticator nginx, installer nginx. Then it's looked for both of the domains that we added to that, both versions. And then it's just a simulated dry run just to make sure. And it does it on its own. Okay, so we're good to go. Let's see if it's come up yet. Our site is up. I want to say that was about 30 minutes as I've continued recording, but if you take a look here, we have a secure site, or not that the site's secure, but the connection to it is secure. And everything works accordingly. And like I said, you'll get emails about the LetsEncrypt. Now, something I also want to try out is this form right here. So I'm going to go ahead and send the message. And let's see, it should have gone through. I guess we should check Mailtrap. Okay, and if you take a look, a few seconds ago, we want to work with you. We have our mail. Fantastic. A couple of things that I do want to address. First things first, I'm going to leave this up so you can register, log in, do whatever you want to do and test it out. Please be respectful. I am not going to be reading any of these emails, and I am going to be automatically deleting it every day. One of the other things I want to show you is how would you look at the database now? So for the purposes of the demo, I will be using Beekeeper. You can use MySql Workbench. You can use whatever you want to use. We've set it up with MySql. Whatever MySql sort of a database setup would be sufficient for this. What we want to do is select a connection type. And again, MySql. We're going to keep localhost as our host, and the port is 3306. The user is going to be Laravel. Password is going to be password. And the database is going to be coders, or remember we misspelled it, portfolio. Then we want to use the SSH tunnel. Now the SSH host name is going to be our IPS. So we're going to go ahead and paste that in here. The port is going to remain 22. We do not have a Bastion host, but the authentication, we're going to use the key file. The SSH username is going to be Nico. And the private key, you're going to open it up, and then you're going to use your DigitalOcean key. This is the private file key, not the public. And then we'll go ahead and try to connect it. Allow access. Okay, I've missed something. Let me try Nico. Okay, here you go. We have our database. Well, we didn't. Did we register a user? I don't recall. Yep, we registered one user. And we also just emailed, so let's check that out. And here is our email. Fantastic. Again, you can use whatever you want to use for your database. That's just what I'm using. Typically, whenever we have a project, you do not want to run your composer dump autoload on your server. You do not want to run your npm installs on the server. You don't want to do any of that on the server. What you would typically do is do all of that in your development environment. And then when you push to production, then you can run your caches, you can run your npm run build and make sure that all of that is set in your dev environment before you push it up. For example, I want to go ahead and create a, let's see, I want to make a change. So we'll go to resources. Let's see what kind of change we can make. How about the terms and policy? So this terms and policy, all I'm going to do is I'm going to under here say, hi there from the dev environment. So now it's there. Now we can do, typically I will do composer, no dev, dump, autoload. And again, I'm going to put all of this on that step-by-step guide that we have. So you'll have it by the time you watch the video. Autoload, and then we want to make sure it's optimized. PHP, artisan, config, cache. I'll usually just run all of these at once. PHP, artisan, route, cache. PHP, artisan, view, cache. And then npm run build. Let all of that run. This doesn't matter, we weren't using SIL anyway, but we run vite build. It's done everything else. So now we can do git push origin. I had something go wrong there. It says everything's up to date, but it definitely is not. So I'm going to try to do it from in here. We'll see. We'll say updated terms. We'll add that. Commit. And now we can push. So first we're going to do push to origin. And then we can do push to the production. I need to re-authenticate. Let's check it out. So now we'll cd, let's say var www Laravel, cd resources, cd views, sudo nano terms droplet.php password. Check it out right here. Hi there from the dev environment. So now let's check the browser and see if it's there as well. Terms. Hi there from the dev environment. And this is now on our server. We have links in the description. I have a $100 credit for you guys to use DigitalOcean. We have finished deploying a Laravel project successfully. If you're enjoying the content, please go ahead and click that like button as it really does help out the channel. Here's a video YouTube thinks you'll like, and here's a playlist to follow along. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.